Hey guys, my name is Francisco Hernandez, and today I'm doing another episode in my Building the Shot series, which is just a series that I started recently where I go over and explain as much as I can about how a single photo of mine was taken. For this episode, I'm going to go ahead and show you guys how I created this image here on the screen of Megan that I took just this last month in November when I was over in Austin. But before I continue, I do want to let you guys know that I've done a lot of episodes in this series already. This one's maybe 13 or 14. So if you guys want to know how I took the images that are on the screen right here, you can go ahead and check out the playlist. It's in the top right corner of the screen right there, or in the description area below. Also, I do share all of my images first on Instagram. So in case you guys want to check me out there at FJH Photo, you can see all the posts that I made. I try to make every single post on there very helpful. I share the XF data, the lighting information, extra information that might be pertinent to the photo. And I just share as much as I can to let you guys know how I created the photos. They're kind of like little mini tutorials. But yeah, definitely check me out at FJH Photo. I'll make sure that your follow is worth it. Okay, so back to the image on the screen right here of Megan. I do want to let you guys know a lot about how this photo was created. And the first thing that I can think about that's very important to how this photo was created was the fact that I used a 6-stop ND filter, which is typically not the case. I typically use high-speed sync for my photos instead. What's unique about the filter that I used for this photo is the fact that I didn't screw it onto a lens, which is typically how you would use an ND filter, but I actually clipped it onto the sensor itself. So I'm about to show you guys that in a second, but the company that made these filters are called STC Optics. My friend Rob already made a video on these filters. I'm actually in the video for a quick second. You can check out his video in the top right corner of the screen as well as in the description area below. So I don't want to go entirely over the filter in this video. I'm going to save that for my own separate video, but I do want to show you guys a little bit about the filter in this video because it's very important to how the photo was created. So this is the filter right here. It comes in this Game Boy cartridge. Let me see if I can, yeah. It comes in this little Game Boy cartridge. I don't know why they chose a Game Boy cartridge, but that's pretty cool. And then you can just open it up and it actually looks like this. Let me just get it out. So this is the filter right here. It's pretty cool. It's pretty well designed. And it just, again, it just clips onto the filter. I'm gonna go ahead and steal Rob's video right now of him showing you guys how to clip that onto the filter because I haven't done that yet. So the company makes a lot of ND filters, but I wanted to get the 6-stop ND filter for the really bright sunny days. But I also ordered a 4-stop ND filter, which I actually do have as well now. But for this photo shoot, I only had the 6-stop ND filter, and that was a little bit of a hindrance. It's something that I wish I didn't have as much darkness for some shots that I'll explain later, but I have 6 and 4 now. And the whole point of wanting to use these filters is because I like the convenience of it. I like the fact that I can put the filter on the sensor and then use any lens that I want, and as well as use the lens hoods for these lenses as well, because if you use a ND filter that's normal, you might not be able to use the lens hood, and that's something that's been annoying for me for a while and why it prevented me from using ND filters, because you lose that contrast if you're shooting kind of close to the sun. The ND filter was the most important thing that I want to go over, and to explain a little bit more about why I use the ND filter, why I would want to use the ND filter. The whole point is that with high-speed sync, which is what I love and have been using for years, you experience a power loss once you enter high-speed sync. So full power with high-speed sync, it'll be full power with high-speed sync, but it won't be that quite of a power output as if you were not using high-speed sync. You experience that power loss, it's there. For example, in my own cases, my own experiences, when I've been using the Godox AD200, the Evolve 200 for years now, since 2017, so almost 3 years, and I've been using it on full power, and it's been doing the job great for those years. But I've always used it in high-speed sync. I recently, for this photo shoot actually, and for another photo shoot I did in August back at Sony Kando 3.0, I used a single Godox AD200 without high-speed sync, and it felt like I was using my Godox AD400 Pro, which is double the output. So I would say that the Godox AD200 in high-speed sync acts as if it's 100 watts. And without high-speed sync, it acts like, you know, how it is, which is just 200 watts. In other words, my Godox AD400 with high-speed sync, which is how I use it all the time, it feels as if it's the Godox AD200 at full. So take that information as you may. Feel free to leave me a comment if you disagree, because a lot of people have, but that's just personally how I feel and why I might want to use ND filters in the future. Moving on. The camera that I used for this photo shoot was the Sony a7R IV because it's a new camera and I've wanted to use it to see how it performs. And also the extra resolution is also pretty cool. And the grip is awesome as well. Seriously, the grip is something that you got to feel yourself to see if you want to get that camera. Hopefully the Sony a7S3 or the Sony a7 IV get the same grip, because I believe the A9 II also has that same grip, because it's really a big difference and it's really nice. The lens that I used was the Samyang 35 1.4. If you guys have been following me on Instagram, you know that mine started to fall apart for some reason. So this is how it looks like now. It has gaff tape on it, because the front part here and even the focusing ring part started to fall apart. I don't know why. I seriously don't think I dropped it. Having said that, and you guys knowing that now, I still highly recommend that lens. I want to review it because I think it's such a great lens. The Samyang 85 and the 35 both have autofocus. They came out, I think the 35 came out 2018 and the 85 came out this year. But yeah, both lenses perform really, really well, and they're not expensive at all compared to Sony's lenses. I believe the Samyang 35 is around 500, maybe 450, and the 85 is 600 or 650. And I also have the Samyang 85 1.4 here because I did use it for a couple of shots as well that I'll show you guys in a second. But I actually really love these lenses. Samyang, if you're there listening, hit me up, because I really do like their lenses. The lighting, like I mentioned before, it was the Godox AD200 Pro. I did have two of them attached into the dual bracket, the Godox AD2, but I only used one. A lot of people out there on Instagram were accusing me, you used two of them. I see them, two of them are attached. But if you guys were following me on Instagram and my Instagram stories, you would know that I only had one bulb attached, which meant I only could use one of those AD200 Pros. But it's cool that I experienced a single AD200 Pro on this day, because it, again, like I said before, it acts as if it's more power without high-speed sync. So I thought I was going to need two of them at full power for the shoot, but I ended up just needing one at full power. And I was actually forced to use that one AD200 Pro at full power, so it ended up working out. That Godox AD200 was modified with my favorite modifier of all time, the Godox, or not the Godox, the Glow Easy Lock 34-inch beauty dish. That's by Adorama. You guys can find the link to that in the description area below, because I highly recommend that modifier. I do want to make a review on that modifier because I've been using it for maybe a year and a half now, and it's like my favorite modifier for a lot of reasons that I'll explain in the review coming up. But yeah, it's not that expensive either. It's around $60 I think right now. It's usually $79, so it's on sale. So, decide to get it, maybe not. Silver interior is what you want to get because it lasts longer, even though I use white interior. But when you feather the light, it doesn't really matter. So yeah, that's the modifier I used. I use my modifiers double diffuse all the time. So that's 2 diffusion panels, one on the outside, one on the inside. That's gonna cut the power of the light, one stop each, but also diffuse it nice and soft, so I don't mind. The rim light that I used was the Godox V1, also known as the Flashpoint Zoom X, I believe. It was bare, so unmodified, behind and camera left. And I used that with the new Godox S2 bracket, which allows that V1, the round head, to be used with that bracket, because the old bracket didn't fit that. So yeah. So now that you guys know the lighting and the gear, I want to go ahead and explain a couple things that happened behind the scenes, because that's just helpful information that you guys might want to know. So the way that the photo shoot was set up was Megan actually reached out to me, asked if I wanted to shoot. I can't remember exactly, I'm going to get my phone in a second, but I can't remember exactly how she found out about me. But she found out that I was a photographer, and if I would be interested in doing a TFP shoot, which is trade for print, trade for photo, just means that she's gonna model for free and I'm gonna give her photos for free. It's kind of balanced like that. And honestly, she's an amazing model. If you live in the Austin area, I would definitely hit her up and see if you want to collaborate. Point is, she reached out to me and I was able to do a shoot with her eventually at that, it was the Austin Library, and she doesn't live too far from the library. And I thought it was a really nice location from Google Maps and checking it out. So I was like, let's go ahead and shoot there. It's right there, it's convenient for you, and it looks beautiful and spacious. Whenever I look at a location, I want to make sure that I can, for one, shoot there for free, not get into any sort of trouble, and also that there's a lot of potential for different types of shots. So I'll look into the colors, I'll look into the buildings. I try to not just see the colors and texture around there, or I always try to make sure that I know how the light's gonna fall. So there's actually an app called Sunseeker, I believe, that I'm gonna actually download today so I can kind of get a better visual of how light falls in that location, so that I can see exactly how the light's gonna fall and get rim light or get sunset, different things like that. But another thing that I wanted to mention is that whenever I go to a photo shoot, I not only look at all these different things like texture, sun location, all that, but one thing that I always try to envision in my head is how the focal length is gonna look like and how blurred that background is gonna look like. So what I mean by that is I try to see like an 85 sometimes. I try to think of the compression and how that background might look like with an 85 millimeter. I try to think about it, how it looks like with a 35 millimeter. And if I use the 105, the Sigma Art 105 that I have, I'll try to think of it as a 105. So point is, if you ever want to go ahead and look at a location and try to figure out how to take some photos there in future, just try to think, or actually get out your camera and put the lens that you're going to be using for that future shoot and put it on and just blur the background and just look around with that blurred lens. And you can see how the background's going to look like and how you might want to use that background in the future. All right, so I know I did a lot of talking so far, but let's go ahead and just jump into the images so you guys can see exactly how they look like. I'll show you guys the straight out of camera images so you can see, again, how they actually look like. So the first image that I want to show you is this one right here on the screen, where it's actually a shot that I took without the light on, which I was actually very fortunate that I took because you guys can see kind of how the light looked like, just natural without any sort of lighting on there. And you can also see how the shadows are falling. That shadow on her face is from the 34-inch beauty dish. So yeah, I wanted you guys to see exactly how this shot looks like without any sort of lighting, because you can see exactly how lighting can transform your images into something else. So the very next image that I want to show you is just that. Exactly how, this is exactly straight out of camera, and I actually love how this looked like. I loved how I exposed for that background to be a little bit, I always want the background to be not exactly exposed correctly, but a little bit darker, because I want that subject to pop more than anything. And you do that by making the subject brighter than that background. So that background's a little bit dark, maybe a stop under normal exposure. And then you have her there at, I believe the main light, the Godox AD200 Pro was 1/8 power, and or 1/4 power. And I think the rim light was 1/8 power. I'm gonna correct myself on the bottom of the screen if I got that wrong. But yeah, this is the first shot that I took like straight out of camera. And I did this shot to test the lighting. One thing you guys can see on the side of her cheek right there is a little bit of shadow from her hair. That rim light on the side there is kind of hitting the side of her arm, but it's also getting a little bit to the top of her head right here. And it's creating shadow from her hair. I actually liked that. I know that there's people out there that mentioned, you know, they didn't like the shadow, but I never really deal with any sort of, I never deal with that issue before, but I liked the pattern of it, so I thought that was very interesting, so I left it there. So this was the first shot that I took straight out of camera. I thought the lighting was perfectly fine. I guessed it correctly. And if you guys ask me if I use a light meter, I don't ever use a light meter. I kind of just do a guess test shot at different outputs, and then I adjust from there. And that's kind of a developed skill, I'll be honest with you guys. So I would definitely recommend a light meter if you guys want to use one without any sort of guesswork. But yeah, back to this image here. This is straight out of camera. This is with the first shot with the lighting and the background exposed that way. This is the second shot. One thing that I was really trying to do for this photo shoot was get a little bit of motion, specifically in this area. I hadn't gotten a motion shot yet in that whole photo shoot. And lately I've been inspired by other photographers to get a little bit more motion in my images. So one thing that was very fortunate for us that day was that the wind was kind of blowing in her direction, which is honestly very, I wasn't thankful as enough as I should have been on that day, because had the wind been blowing behind her going that way, it would have kind of ruined the shot and I would have been able to take it. I'd have to shoot the other way where there wasn't a nice blue background, there wasn't a lot less sunlight. So, you know, wind direction is very important for a photo shoot because it kind of dictates how you can take the photo in certain direction and how the background is going to look like. So yeah, the wind was very in our favor, and I wanted her to take a couple steps forward so I can get a little bit of motion of her kind of walking forward, actual real life motion. So the wind was very helpful for the hair motion, and then her stepping was helpful for, you know, her looking like she's walking. So I did a couple, I had her get into a spot where the light was going to fall, and then, you know, take a couple steps back and then go into that spot, and I took a shot. I do have a little bit of behind the scenes video right now that I'll show you on the screen right now, so you guys can see exactly what went down. Let's try this again. You're like, you had a good smile, you had good everything, smolder, what do you want to call it? So I want to grab that.
Okay.
You're looking at me.
Okay.
Stop. It's fine. We work with it. Yeah. I got too much. Too much here. Oh, that looks cool. Yeah, do that. Let's switch forward. I always do that too. So you guys can see that I did direct her quite a bit. I wanted that motion. I wanted that gaze, that kind of just looking at me. And she did a great job. So the last shot that I took was this one on the screen right here. And the very next shot was the one where I really, really liked it. And I edited it. And that's why I wanted to make this video talking about it, because I really liked that photo. The main things that I liked about that photo was her gaze, her expression, the way that her hair was falling, kind of the motion to the side. And I also liked her pose. Yeah, so I really loved this shot, so that's why I edited it. One thing that I wanted you guys to know is the settings. I was shooting at ISO 200, 1/200th of a second, f1.4 with my Samyang 35 and A7R4. I would prefer to use a lower ISO, but for this photo shoot, for this specific instance, because I was using that 6-stop ND filter, I had to use a little bit higher ISO to capture a little bit of that motion. I didn't want it to be completely blurry. For example, if I used 1/50th of a second, it might have been fine if she kind of stayed still exactly where she landed. But you just risk a lot of blur, and I didn't want super amount of blur. A little bit was fine, which is exactly why 200th of a second was chosen. And then I had to use ISO 200 to get that exposure where I wanted it. But I want to let you guys know exactly a little bit more about how I edited it, because it was a little bit complicated because her dress was a little bit wrinkled. So I'll go ahead and show you guys that right now. So I'm not sure if I mentioned, I probably did, but I'm not going to use the screen recording software because it's been acting up a little bit on my computer. So I'm going to just show you guys the images with every little step adjusted. So the first thing that I want to let you guys know that I did in terms of editing is, again, like I mentioned before, the shot wasn't completely in focus, so I sharpened it a little bit. I used the high pass filter method, which is, you know, if you guys want to know more about that, I'll leave a link to that in the description area below. But again, I used the high pass filter method, which is my preferred method for sharpening photos, to just give that a little bit more sharpness. The very next thing I did was frequency separation, which is actually a huge step for this photo because, again, like I said before, that dress was a little bit wrinkled and I didn't like the wrinkles. It felt like it was distracting from the image. So I used the frequency separation, and I used the brush tool. I used the mixer brush tool, which is something that I've been using a lot lately for removing wrinkles more than actually retouching the face and textures of the skin. So that ended up actually being something that really helped in terms of the shadow on her leg. So you guys can see right here, you see all those lines from the fence starts right there. What do you want to call it? Fence? Yeah. The fence, the railing, you can see that there's shadows on her legs. And through using frequency separation and the mixer brush, I was able to kind of just smooth that out so that the lines don't appear so much. And as, of course, made the dress less wrinkled. Then, of course, I did dodge and burn, which is my favorite part of editing because it gives that photo that extra pop that I like. I also added a little bit of contrast, which I always do by getting a levels adjustment layer, and I bring it up a little bit, bring up the blacks, and then I always get a little bit of another curves adjustment layer, bring up the exposure, and I kind of just adjust it till it looks fine, where I get that contrast, but it's not overexposed. One thing that was really distracting to me to this shot was the colors. So you can see above her is that that lift, and you also see in the back there towards the end of the bridge, you see that there's a red railing there. I didn't like those two things, as well as that green sign over there showing up in the fence. I didn't like these colors because I felt, again, they're distracting from the image. So I went ahead and just colored over them, sampled colors that were next to those, painted over them, and then changed the blending mode of the layer to color. And that kind of just made them blend in. So I always do that to get rid of distracting colors, so you guys can know that now. And the next things I did after that was I did selective color. So there's an adjustment layer in Photoshop called selective color, which I always do to kind of color tone the image a bit. So I did one step here. It's very subtle. I think it's in the skin tones more than anything. And then I did another, which you can definitely see in the blues in the background. So that's definitely present there. I brightened the image just a tad bit again. And then the last couple of things that I did was I wasn't liking, and this is something that's very subjective, but you guys let me know your opinion on this. I felt like because of the way that dress was adjusted, that it wasn't form-fitting and it wasn't giving a true representation of how she looks like. So I did a little bit of liquify, which you guys can see here. I also made the hair just a little bit down. And then after that, I did a little bit of dodge and burn on the bra because I felt like the shadows, the way that they're performing, the way that the shadows were, it kind of looked like less how her form is. I'm trying to sound not creepy here, but I tried to make it look how she actually is. And in other words, not having a bumpy boob. So yeah, so I wanted to make it look normal. So that's what I did with the dodge and burn. I did a little bit of color balance on the floor to give a little bit of blue tones. I did a little bit of color toning to the jacket there using the selective color tool as well. And then after that, I got rid of some extra distractions on the image. And after that, I was pretty much done. That's pretty much everything I can explain about how this photo was taken. This video is probably already too long enough already, but so thank you guys for sticking through to the end of the video. If you guys want to know more about how this photo was created, or if you guys want to know about anything about how any of the other photos that I create are created, then go ahead and let me know directly on Instagram or Facebook or my lighting group called Learn to Light and Off Camera Flash Lighting Community. I share a lot in there. I share actually a lot extra helpful stuff in there. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the photo. It's one of my favorites this year. It's probably my favorite photo this year. And again, it wasn't completely in focus. So if you enjoy a photo and it doesn't look absolutely perfect in terms of focus or other things, as long as you like the photo, then that's all that matters. I'm really happy with this photo, and Megan was as well. So yeah, thank you guys for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Okay, so I know I just ended the video, said thank you for watching and all that, but I forgot to mention that if you guys saw the behind the scenes for this shot, you would know that her outfit changed, but it's because I forgot to take a behind the scenes. The one time that I forgot to take a behind the scenes photo, it was for that shot that I really liked. So I asked her if she could go ahead and, we could recreate it kind of. Another thing that I forgot to mention is that I mentioned earlier in the video, the very beginning, that I wish I had used no ND filter later on in the shoot, or at least less ND filter, because one thing that happened, I'm actually showing you guys an image on the screen, which is another favorite of mine from the shoot. This image right here. For this image, you can see, or you can't see, but I'm using ISO 400 at 1/100th of a second with my Samyang 85 1.4 and at 1.4. And the reason why I had to use that higher ISO 400, is because I didn't want to risk any blur being slower than 1/100th of a second, and I was already at 6-stop ND filter. If I had used a 4-stop ND filter, which is exactly what I have now after the shoot, then I could have been at ISO 100. 400 to 200 is 1 stop, 200 to 100 is another stop. So 6-stop minus those 2 stops that had to increase would have been that 4-stop, which would have been ideal. But actually, to be completely honest with you guys, this shot that I took, this shot on the screen right here, this could have been taken with high-speed sync, and because I was at very, very low outputs on my lights. If I used them with high-speed sync, that power loss that I experienced, or that you experience with high-speed sync, wouldn't have even mattered. So, but as I mentioned before, that filter that I used for the A7R4, it's not meant for the A7R4. So it's kind of stuck in there a bit, and it's kind of hard to remove. I know how to remove it now. I got, used to figuring out how to remove it. But I should have just used my A7R3 because I would have removed it really easily. And I wouldn't have to use a higher ISO. But, and I keep saying but to myself. But, you don't have to worry about high ISO sometimes because, using new cameras, you don't really need to worry about that. And that's the last thing I wanted to say about this video. So, again, thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.